Digi Gugore, Digi to be a tablam canishes, and Digi to be a tablam da, Dunga, Seki, tablam kinya, the Jimbati, and the Ma, and Jikichanchu Lamrim said, and then the Ma, to Stine, Sungore, then that the Anzulia, Digi to be a tablam canecanes, Yamsulengore, Dunga said, Dunga de canecanes, said, that Digi gore, that Jiki, Dunga said, tablam tempa and tiki to be tablam de party, Dinyam Sulea, answer Yamnaji Rimba ma, that Judge Lamrim Chimbo said, Lamrim Jing said to Tusman, Diko Sugar, what answer?
Good evening. So here, coming to recognize how all of us, all sentient beings in fact, only want to experience happiness, want to be freed of all problems and difficulties. We turn to a text such as this, which presents the full and complete method to eliminate suffering and the method to attain lasting happiness. So the text is part of the Lamrim tradition, which means presents the graduated stages by which one trains one's mind so as to eradicate suffering and attain lasting happiness. To bring that about, one needs to know what is suffering and what is happiness, and then what the method is for cultivating happiness and eradicating suffering. And this text presents that in its entirety.
Denegi Tone and Jig Jumi Tone Anzulia, Lulia, and the Jig Nenaza Jigungore, the Kangachi Yungore, Di Kangadi say Tablam de Karatango Segoras and Anzuki, Jig Kala Seki, Sisu Trading Tempata, Mejuchiada, then the Dusine, Ma and Jig or Kangadi Sekugurwa, Chesanganzu Chi, Jumi, Trubi, Genji, Anzulia, Lula Nena, the Kangayadi, that Di Ganesiorasine. Chi Yung will be the Tunjela Dene, Nazu Gangan Seko, the Chagorwa, Chesa Ganga Yona de la Chi will be Dene, Chi and the Jumigi, Tuane and Anzulia, Lulia Gangalon, Yajaka, Tungachi Yungore. That Denegi Chi Yung will be Dene members and Nang Samgi to some Lutana Tone, Mari by the same some Lutana Tone, Dusine, Mati Tone, Ganga Yonda Yungor. Chesanga Dunga Yonda de la Tangbo Dunga Seala, Dunga Yonda Hakura, Dunga Yonda, the Ganation was Chi and Junga Tupi Genji, Gangachi Kyoje. That Nang, Samla Tang in Norway Genji, and Deacon and Ganga Yonda Jigni. That Ganga Yonda, this Nyungorua. That Nyo, that the Gangani Seala, and a Sego Labdu, then the Chi Tunking to the Ganga Yonadi, Sealia, Chi Tunking Tupche, Major Jana, Nangazuge. Chiki Kala Trading Theatre, Denigi Tone, and Dusine Ganga Sewa the Chiche. That Nang Samno Tone Ganga Yonadi, Chi Tunking Gaze, Yaku, and Gazi Juvene, Nang Samno Tone Ganga de say to your Galakavuche war. Just that Nang Samno Tone Gangadi, that kind of Samorison, the Samno Tange, Samno Tang with Tone, and the Ganga Se war, Samno di Ganga Se, Ganga Yoga, Samno di Docho, and the Samno Shi Tange, and the Samno Tang with Tone, and the Ganga Se war, Ganga. Yongya de la Nietzsche, then a Ganga Yoni Yoga, Gang Sege, Tablam de Ya, Riba Nietzsche, Rua.
Recognizing that none of us want to experience any problem, suffering, or difficulties, we need to come to see from where our suffering arises, our problems arise. Because if we can identify the cause, then we can apply a solution. So in general, unwanted circumstances arise from two general sources, the one being external and the other being internal. So the external sources of our problems and difficulties have something to do with the material world, the physical world. So it would be, for example, if it's a little cold, we experience some suffering, or if we encounter some germs, we are ill, or if we have too little to eat, we're hungry. So in many ways, we experience suffering from the external or the material world. The second way is due to our inner world, our way of thinking, that our mind can be tormented by problems and difficulties. So these are the two sources of our problems and difficulties, the external material world and the inner mental world. And these have two separate solutions. If we're experiencing problems to do with our material world, then largely the solutions, the temporary solutions, are found through altering our material world. If we're hungry, we need to eat something. If we're cold, put on warm clothing or put on the heater. If we're ill, take medication. So in this way, one can temporarily overcome one's problems and difficulties in the material world by altering our material circumstances. But no matter how comfortable our material circumstances are, this cannot lead to us overcoming our inner our problems that arise in our mind from our way of thinking. So when we're experiencing mental torment, there the solution is not to be found in the external world, no matter what changes we make in our external world. When we are suffering because of our way of thinking, what we need to change is that, our way of thinking. We need to then look within ourselves and transform our way of thinking in order to overcome our problems and difficulties that arise within.
Bendigo kanga se da samlo gi thone kanga ya ji ngju gi samlo tang wi thone se go re sa ji ji dine yen za da nga ju gi chi tun jin thone be ya wu ha zu ya ji lu le na za me ba an ji gi su bu de wu an za ya tong ya da Bendigo thone ka ya me ba so su ge zhuo bo ge wo ni wu dine ji cha chang de be yo ba ne ya so le sem bi ji bu me na ane 강아지 치 튕긴기 약고여나 디 강아지 대기디 열대 디 뉴버마 즉 셈제 강아지 셈 숙체자제 디기 튕긴기다 제가 치게 저기 디기 두야 튕겨 여바나 디기 용고 말 제가 셈게 강아지 셔라지 아야 즉 셈리아 베지 셈을 회시시 즉 잠바다 제외 셈 회시시 셈 기우 저베나 치 튕기에 돈에 강아지 사야동야도 공부로 시다 내내게 지 교부를 줘베네 셈리 디기 여반자 디니 류리 강아디야 되스 여반나 강아디 충충을 하잖아 안에 수수기를 디기 채용을 제자다 나도 류다 셈기 디기제나 셈기 디기디 숙체 류다 셈기 강아디에는 셈기 강아디 숙체와래 디니 자당 안 지금 낭비기 다 최기 냠는 돈에 시에도 갑라 다 조 셈기 토네 안 셈기 강아세야다 셈겨는 디기 줍사디 단 삼로다다디 데네신 땅을 삼로 두스탄에 디기 용거래 삼로 데니스탄에 강아세 투거래 삼로 데니스탄에 강아 용거 디타교 말에서디 다 람든 조어디 땅아 저기 디năng 시에고 송거로 와다치
If we find ourselves in very good circumstances, for example, we have abundant material comforts, we are in good health, and we are surrounded by people who really care for us, we can still, despite such excellent external circumstances, we can still be deeply unhappy. And what the source of our unhappiness then will not be the material world. Our health is good, we're surrounded by friends and loved ones, and we have no financial needs at all. But our mind is unhappy. There's something, when we look within, we feel this deep unhappiness. This is very possible. So the alternative, though, is also true. Or the opposite is also true. When one's mind is now in a very good state, one's peaceful and calm and mentally in a stable place, then whatever is happening in our external world, whatever unfavorable circumstances we have, perhaps poor health or impoverishment, but because our mind is in a good place, we can easily deal with these problems. They cannot overwhelm us at all. So what we see from both of these circumstances, these two opposite circumstances, is our mental state really is the dominant of the two in terms of sources of happiness or suffering, as opposed to our material world. And therefore, the teachings of the Buddha focus on our mind. They focus on identifying how to transform, how to develop our mind, and presenting methods to do so. And these methods lead to cultivating wholesome, healthy ways of thinking, which are called paths. And this is what's referred to in the title of this of the text, or the genre of text, is the graduated sequences for training one's mind in order to attain enlightenment. These are the sequences to train one's mind to develop healthy ways of thinking that are completely freed of problems and difficulties and leading to a state of lasting happiness.
Dine zadang anzo samlo dangtang thone dushina samlo yaga jin duha defa dangma yukaya da dine ge samlo thone lobjong cheala da dine garosne 퇴디 기침보레스 장 담보 퇴고 삼로 데네데네시 냠는 데네 지역고래 삼로 데네 땅고래 데네 땅이 말서 퇴어가야 돼 기침보 슈레 세상에 그것이 퇴비 판연 퇴바이나 판연 데네데네 여기서 퇴비 판연 데네서 퇴비고 마 퇴비 판연 퇴고야 기침보레 퇴바이나 판연 데네서 여러 마 퇴바이나 안가줄야 안경은 데네서 여러 에서지 퇴비 판연고 마시 다 퇴비값이야 퇴는 당한지 퇴의 년국으로 하다 내 년비값은 간스 년국으로는 삼노 다하들이야 소소기 강아지게 다 셈기 녀모 두숨되게 밤매와 소고도 다디 매와 소야 된다를 양이 년제 디 탑람된 냠소 렌제 냠는 탈심바 지긴 셈베게 누치네 맞아 년비게 삼다나 두치네 년국으로 해서지 다마 안에다 시행디기 간의 시고를 시도에 대항 안에 지마 잠바다 제위 토네 신 단년에 동안 세야다 디기주비에 탈럼되게 봐 비전에 판배 삼력군이랑 전에 제와체 안대항 안에 만노와다 마주파 안지야 오진마 시고를 해서지 당한 지금 누시네 안에 가상 아주 디강을야다 퇴비 편에 되는 연비기 안에 지게 주의다 아니 가소리 두시 죽템베토네 년수 마시비게 다 최시비티가블라 안 두시 안 죽템베오네 마 최송타 삼르티네시 다시 송고그래 사디 디고 아주 되네게 슈사바르디간이야
To be able to develop our mind, we have to come to know ourselves well. Come to know our mind well. In order to know our mind well, we need to gather knowledge. And therefore, in the preceding chapter, we looked at the importance to hear or listen or study, because we need to gather knowledge to come to understand which classes of minds are wholesome, and then learn how to develop these, and which classes of minds are unwholesome, and how to eradicate these. But to be able to be able to do this, one needs a foundation of knowledge. So therefore, we looked at the need to listen or hear or study teachings. And now in the chapter that we're nearing the end of, we've looked at the one hearing the teachings or listening to teachings, with what attitude should they engage in study. And that is, on the one hand, have a wish to hear the teachings, to come to understand their own mind, and then to apply what they hear to their own mind, to put it into practice through meditation. So the first part of the motivation is to receive the teachings as being about oneself and apply them to one's own mind. And the second part of the motivation is, as part of our development, is through developing wholesome minds and weakening our unwholesome minds, that we become a better person and we have a better impact on the world around us. And thereby, we have the motivation to develop good qualities such as love and compassion and wisdom, so that we can have an ever more wholesome and beneficial impact on those around us. So this was at the start of this chapter, how to listen to Buddhist teachings, and thereafter we came to the section on how to explain the Dharma, how to explain the Buddhist teachings, and we are about halfway through that section now.
냠는 제발라 삼로당야라 아니 삼로당하 신고고래 신고야라 제발라 퇴고고래 제산 퇴비 고비 퇴비 된다데 그래서네 냠는 삼로당하 신야 해야 되레스 된데 되니 돼 하고 얘기디 고바 김자 그래서는 고미야 되레스 제산 삼로데 야게 다야 되레스 제산 디네사 퇴바 삼바 퇴비 된 나보 퇴 디네 퇴비 된데 삼로당 디네 퇴비 된데 하고 해도 안 될이야 안 곰제 소수의 삼로디 야니고 공회도 다야 되다 퇴섬 곰숨 삼로당하 디네 땅고래 사정한다 최유톤의 로병 삼로당탕의 랍자 잡자다 냠는지 곰 잡사디 디네 송고로 받아.
And the sequence of hearing or studying and reflecting and meditating, we looked at its great importance in a previous chapter. That one, to be able to transform oneself, one has to gather knowledge of the hearing or studying process. And whilst gathering this knowledge, one needs to reflect on it, think about its meaning, seeing how it applies to oneself, if it applies to oneself, how it applies to oneself, and so forth. So not just merely a mere gathering of knowledge, not merely gathering an intellectual understanding of the Buddha Dharma, but reflecting on its meaning. And as one becomes quite stable in one's knowledge and integrated to some degree through reflection, one needs to also then meditate on what one has been studying. And the process of meditation, so the synonyms for the word of meditation are habituation and familiarization. Because what one is trying to do through the process of habituation, through the process of meditation, is taking what we've heard or studied and reflected on and become habituated to it. In other words, to become habituated to wholesome ways of thinking and to break our habituation to unwholesome ways of thinking.
Geshe Thubten Rabten 다 최선데 다는 최선은들이야 시 초바다 맞춰와 가요레스 니기디나 가네시나 디그리 베스나 데지 말에 사진마 다시 송고래.
So we are turning to the text. The major outline we started last time was how to explain the Dharma, and then some advice was given, and now we come to the outline there about how the one who's going to teach, how they should differentiate between those to whom they should and should not give explanations. So that the handout, it's on page 32. In the printed book, it's on or published book, it's page 28.
Da duwe doles masol war mijao she sumbatar sowa madabar michejings.
Reading from the text, the Vinaya Sutra says, do not act without being asked to. Accordingly, do not teach without having been asked, and even when someone asks, examine the vessel. Just to say that this translation they've used of ask, usually the word is translated as to supplicate. So do not ask without being supplicated. Do not teach without having been supplicated. And even when someone has supplicated. So that's the translation you'd be more used to.
난 상예점내지기 두위기 도나래 가르송에서는 마소와 미자오 세대 마소와 미자오 세대 마 소수기 최시기는 that many Yangedige Nabongalia Church party Sonro Chess and Ya Hugo Wars, Sonro Chess and Shu and Churching are doing Shiro Chess and Shuna, Shenamado, and Chicago, many a kind of Malabachilia, are the Suzuki singing Toto Genema, share your mares, your mares.
Buddha Shakyamuni himself said in the Vinaya Sutras, do not ask without being, do not act without being supplicated. So the meaning is, someone should, before one teaches, before one shares one's Dharma knowledge, that someone needs to request the particular teaching or guidance, and do so with a manner of sincerity and with a manner of sincerity. So therefore, one should only give teachings if one has been requested to.
Many someone midike chola deva meba chola donyer meba and march choshera malabaja sosurang choosing the ordinary choshabaina then macho midi jijena and the corona sing your ralansing your rayon sigre manzulia harsin shiguya sada denegi kyokohatang do sada denegi your ralon Peg Sabla, Nuki, Rasiniga, Novayagi, Gangayungo, Dene Yoya Baza, Parshungu Baza, Dene Ya, and the Chick Shiro Chess and ya so at the Shubena, she or Mashuben, Dene Shigio Mare said, Chesna Dene Shabaina, Jigla, and then Susuke, Namba Maimba Chimbaina, Cheshia Chena, Shandana Dene Chuluton in Yoralia. Ayaji Denigi Mena Yaji, Mashevacin, and Sosulia Nanzula Garshi, said, Denigi Chiga Peg Sablia, and the Rashinika, Gangayo, the Dibusayagi, Yungo Baza, Denigi Yangayo, Deneza, Shikyo Mare said, Mashev Gimzeno did that.
The reason why Buddha said, do not act without being supplicated, in other words, without someone making a sincere request for you to give a particular teaching, without that request being made, one should not just readily from one's own side teach the Dharma to those who may well not be interested, who may well feel that you're trying to convert them, you're trying to gather students, and in this way, they may actually develop a negative attitude or may perhaps even get angry. And moreover, the one who's being a bit overzealous in wanting to teach may well be coming from a place of showing off or wanting to show just how knowledgeable they are. So therefore, faults can come to both sides. And therefore, instead of the Dharma, the Buddha's teachings bringing benefit, actually the one person who perhaps is showing off is going to create faults, and the other person who's feeling that they're having something pushed onto them may well generate a negative attitude.
And after
the quotation, Lama Tsongkhapa himself reiterates the point. Accordingly, do not teach without having been asked, and even when someone asks, examine the vessel. However, as the King of Concentration Sutra says, knowing someone to be a suitable vessel, it is acceptable to teach even without having been asked. Further modes of conduct are set forth in the Vinaya Sutras.
나는 소와 뎁나 아니 안신의 디그리 베스네 다 디안 삼당고 몽고레체 소와 데발라야 뇌다바다 야 최시로 지혜신의 마 마야 라바이나 람사 최신의 디그리 베라네 디안 디기 말해체래 다 될야 신의 디기도에 미들 삼당고래 제바체고래서 지제나 안데 지게 mania church shiro lavandi samno nala ya kari yomada hagu ko mare jinena anji ko church yoga deba yoba ina manjiba chik church shesha bana kolya peng sabla nyoba nyugo bana andini shi yonsi bare dine sa lamsa ya church na digdu digmendo korongi church sonro che shadi sem dingiro ngene ran korongi church je deba da nyamnen je deba yoba je shiguyena 양지 chölia 그 시에게 가르치도 쳐다져야다 아니지 균주져야 삼나 되내지는 싫어지에서 삼단규가 가능성은 그 싫어지세야지 가능성이나 선배가 두 심주지에 신나 디기도에 디기민도스는 언두선 뇌지 따바쳐고래 다 되내문이랑 그런 그 취시에기 취냐 그 되바다 düny를 자야기 되면 왜냐라 되내기 삼다제 롭전지에게 düny를 두번 여바지 지금 송로지 셰바이나 되네 바시고레스 니네 멤버야 지금 최근에 균체야다 균체야다 지금 곧 되니게 아니 두치네 삼로단지 아직 최시로 셰스 슈바이나 되네 이나 군로 되네 슈바나 되네 시교 말해 사실 진짜 소한 데발라야 뇌 따바당스 뇌 따고레스 뇌도는 뇌 따바세데다 신의 디기도에 민도 세kulung kanestu samna tu chene simjukche tene chene digyoba gyungumebana shegores tene gene gyenda gakja yungubana shegyo mares ore.
So where it says, accordingly do not teach without having been supplicated, and even when someone does ask, examine the vessel. The meaning here is that, firstly, as was said previously, one should not teach unless it has been requested, and requested with sincerity and with a keen interest. And if it has been requested, one is not obligated to give that particular teaching. One needs to, as the potential teacher, think for yourself. Is the student, firstly, is the student being genuine in their request, or they may be just being polite, or they maybe don't really have any understanding of what it is they're actually requesting to have taught to them. So with the teacher, they need to look at their motivation and see if they are suitable for this particular teaching. Are they really eager to receive this teaching, and do they have the required foundation for that teaching to be beneficial or not? And then if the teacher comes to the decision that perhaps this isn't ideal, then they should not give the teaching. But on the other hand, if they feel that the student is genuine and it will be beneficial, then it should be given.
그 디기 주비에게 탑람지 조고로 데레 펜바지 고시고로 데레 마펜나 아니 디 펜에 잡라 콘르기야다 아니 뇽모바기야 라진이 강한 책이 맨날 신의 디고 말와 그래서는 상이기 최시에서야디 마 탑람 된지 그 동안세야다 디기 주비에게 탑람을 송고고로와 제가 되네자 되네기 탑람디 마도바제 디 잡라 강한테야다 뇽모바게 중교변의 시교 말에서 디르와다 제가 제 최시비 고바 된다 닝보디 베니 냥한디기 셈기 동아세야 디기 주비하게 탑람로 줘가지고 고로와.
In brief, what the teacher would be thinking about is, if I give this teaching or not, which approach would lead to the weakening of afflictions in the mind of the student, which approach would lead to the strengthening of the afflictions in the mind of the student. This the teacher needs to look at, because perhaps giving this teaching would lead to the student having a negative reaction, or perhaps giving the teaching would lead to the student having a very positive response to that teaching. So this is what the teacher primarily is looking at, because The whole purpose of the Buddha's teachings is to eradicate problems in the life in the life of the individual and the world as a whole, and to add thereby to the happiness in individuals and the world as a whole. So therefore, this teacher primarily is thinking, will this teaching bring benefit to those who are requesting or not?
다네 대지 다 최대 소어제야 손나마 주변에 야 제고레스라 대지디로와 다데네야 안다 야 마시는 마 윤이셰 최셰 요 말에 별람네 대야 요래 제 인지 민지 다시 말해서 대야 요래서 간스 요래라나 뇌도 셰나 마솔로 양 셰도 중화스 뇌도 셰나스 제가 도시는 매니 미디기 알레 최시로체스 말아바이나양 마수 야슈 손 마슈바이나야 코롱을 최제게 되냐려 여봐 님보 여봐 시에나 콜로야 아니 그 콜로 팽 그 동화세야 된 디기두에라 판도지 여봐다 하거나 아니 콜레 니긴 rum에 봐다 코롱에 팽기 여봐다 하거나 하고구에나 아니 뇌도 하고 뇌 시에봐서 되는 하고서나 아니 거야 슈르치 손로치스 말아바네 콜레 최시나 디기리에서 그래 뇌도 시에나 마솔양 시도 룽와스 시도 룽그리 신의 디그리에서 그러다.
So firstly, we've seen that teachings should be sincerely requested, and secondly, that the teacher then should investigate whether the person is suitable for this teaching or not, and now thirdly, actually the converse can be true as well, that if a particular teaching is not requested, if the teacher knows the student, knows them well, and thereby tell that a particular teaching will be of benefit to them, then without that teaching being requested from the teacher's side, they can give it. And this is expressed with knowing someone to be a suitable vessel. It is acceptable to teach even without having been asked.
데네데네 시어거스 변하는 뒤롱로와 롭종 차사 퇴차베네 랍라긴 지기나 랍라긴 미시그 외종 로직이 랍라긴 제기 양자 로니스 미세 장고도와 그디 랍종 토름 랍라 퇴차네야 다 랍라긴 제나 양자 랍라긴 제그 긴 외종 세디 그로 니숨지 장고도와 데네기 장제 아니 부글로 롭된 제나 야 저롭종 퇴제 되네 기 외종 맞제 롭트 제바니라 캬바라 셔라인 거로 와다 캬바라 랍다 콜리스네 퇴바세 지디기 퇴차외 제려야 양자 랍다 긴제라 부글로 간에 랍고여세데 랍다 외종스 랍다 긴기 장하죠 디네 장차제 랍바이나 디네 랍칸 지경 거로 와 랍다 퇴제 되네 기 외종 맞제 부즈 랍칸 지어로 와 딩이디 캬브라 셔라 용고레 제 부을 말랍탄이야 안지 고 삼로다나 부의 삼로다나 랍탄 간에 라고 지지는 기회 외전 제디 기침보레서 지금 아주 지단계 랍라kin에 기 외전 지고로 와 디기 침부지고로 와데 고 랍라kin 파지는데 경한 기행이 퇴세 외전 집에 락결가려 된고레 제 되네나 고 내가 취해야 야가 용고도 와 어디나시 상유 좀는 되게 대등 안 줄이야 최시행들라 그시 시행들이야 삼로간에서 땅고 그래 군주에 간에 개고래 다 되네게 안다 서서 삼다다 군주에 되네시게 다 미니 기르리야 롭다 말랍디급리야 부미 냥해들이야 삼로간에서 용배 되네시에나 랍교 말에 되네시에나 랍고 세 가지래 최시행이야 yin 외종 나신 송도 와대 아주 세세 마셔나 아주 지속을 놓치는 yin 외종 수업 차기도 와대
This part of the text we can liken to if someone wishes to become a school teacher, they will graduate from school, they'll go to university, and they'll study their subject well. Thereafter, they will do a further course in how to teach their topic, how to teach their subject. So the teacher training. And that teacher training we can liken to what is being presented here. The overall topics of what will be needed to be taught, this comes later. But right at the beginning here, we have the actual teacher training. And so therefore, here the training to be a teacher involves what to look for in a student, to see how to judge whether they're suitable for a particular teaching or not, such as have they requested with sincerity, will the topic be of benefit to them or not, and so forth. So this section here is a bit like teacher training.
sanyi sungshebe desoba nyamlen je sosugyo lo nyam dona je deni ma jine yendi chushe ne chushe dusine shegoresa and then denege yaji ujon ro che denege mewe na yaji ganxin we ongi xingyo sa da ba chasan xie xian xing meni pando ma som de ji chasan xie ne yaji 지게 생규 쉐와로 제 차르고 되는지네 언제 제 송교 말에서 또 나닝보라 제가제레 수수기 최셰바 이나 최시도 갑라 공론데 삼로 되는 현례 판별다 제외 삼로 다진의 쉐고레스 소소베 나갸다 제 수수기 에너지 거서 담년다 용야 삼다교 말다 아세지 직제 되네마 쉐비가도 류가기 쮸바데바 이네 류가기 쮸바디게 야고치 아니지기 지가 지수보이네 도로이나 장마로치 되네게 지 두시는 고연제 니시고레사지 쉐디갑려야 머니 쉐세게 간사들이야 간네신의 판바 연구도 되네신의 판바 가르치 용사데 삼당이 토네 아니 두시네 또 송고를 쉐고를 해서지 나던다는 인보디 송고를 받아
So to summarize what we've looked at in this section on how to explain the Dharma, is that firstly, from the student side, one needs to check, do they have a sincere interest? Are they making a genuine request? And do they have suitable prior knowledge for the topic? And moreover, when one comes to explain, when one makes a decision to teach a topic, that one needs to teach in accordance with the capacity of the students, to limit oneself to share only as much as will be of benefit, not to share all your knowledge, because that will be too much for the students to handle and they may have a negative response. So therefore the teacher needs to be skillful and share in accordance with the capacity of the students. And moreover, the motivation, as we covered last week, should be primarily one of wanting to benefit, only teaching what one knows well, and teaching in a way that is free of afflictions such as pride and thoughts of reputation, but really being guided by the wish to be of benefit. And thereby this ties in with what we've looked at tonight, of choosing the topic to match to the student's capacity as well. And moreover, last week we saw in terms of behavior that one needs to be clean, and the place that one needs to teach also needs to be suitable. And then, as we've looked at tonight, certain characteristics are required from the student's side as well.
대파 야소 소체 마시베 이나양 델리아 판도 여바다 드녀 여바 대셰바나 판도 여바지나 아니시네 룽그리에서제 디 콩디가르스네 띵이지네 예보 도나는 송요레 상유점디 띵이지 예배 도세죠 언디나는 송요레 예제레.
And moreover, what has been said about the teaching, even when a request has not been made, this was said by the Buddha as well, but in the King of Concentration Sutra.
And
then the final line, further modes of conduct are set forth in the Vinaya Sutra.
anda kunjuishin namni sido chö sungye sungbi kabli ya anda ju sungta da kunju denege tala duye donale denechine sungcho denechine sheshuk mare asadi odo sine duye donale ya denege chö sungya gimba de mongo sungyore.
So in some of the Vinaya Sutras it is presented in quite more of an expansive manner of certain things to look for in terms of or certain things to engage in when teaching.
Mena Chushivi Kabla Miji Nidu Yuvena and Delia Kuram the Dues in the Shushianatic Marella. Jida Yajik Ya Lang Due Motuba, never the Ushinane, the Ashi Chukore, Shendicores, never the Nigi young Ya Due, Ya Lanchi, Due Motuba, which need to get in the young colleague Chushi was in a Dine Konidu Vicalashin Antigores. The men beget Subutana Yovada, the negative, never the kind of Nidu in the Delia Chushi, the Nidu and Delia Chushi Yomarejere.
To give one example of the many things that are mentioned in these Vinaya Sutras, is if someone's asleep, do not teach to such a person, or someone who's lying down rather. Because if someone's lying down and you're teaching to them, they're probably going to fall asleep. So rather, one should teach to someone who's in a posture where they're likely to stay alert. It's different. The Vinaya Sutras also assert that if someone is ill and they need to lie down, that's a different story. But otherwise, if they're just very comfortable, the chances are they'll not stay awake. This chapter has three major outlines. We've looked at the first, how to listen to the Dharma. We've now concluded the second, how to explain the Dharma. And now we come to the third, how to conclude the session in relation to both hearing and explaining. Oh, that's a bit longer. The roots of virtue of teaching and listening in this way should be sealed by means of pure aspirational prayers, such as in the prayer of good conduct, or the king of prayers.
다네 코로나지 체제 되게 듬바여 바체 소왔답 지내라메게야 디콜레 펜베데 펜네야 보레 삼베게 펜베 제외 삼베 토네 다마 최시 마노와다 마투바도 지내야 고지시 디네시에도다 니가량 계자야 오사요로와 지나 지니게 계베 자와서 년비게 계자 년엔들레 년비게 계자 사요레 시간들레 시비게 계와 사요레 지나 디니게 계와 사바디 아니야 안지게 소수기 타바다 탐지지고 고바도 규규와 쇼사다 아니 젤리에 펜바 개침부도 규규와 쇼스 뭐하냐고레스 안디야다 데네게 상호치비가 라소바스데 파파 젬베기 아니 상호 전주sem바 젬베기 전주sem바 저 전주 상주에 나를 몰람 빼 개침부 쉬우겨요 디나 신체 아니 데라 konzuge molan deba nashi dagara ngi nganju sunam saba te dina jin gyurgyuwa sho sebegeda molam jagore eje.
Those who have, with sincerity, requested the teachings and done so with a wish to spiritually develop so they can be of ever more benefits in this world, as well as the teacher who has taught the teaching with a pure motivation, with a wish to benefit those before him, and through those before him to benefit more broadly, both parties will have accumulated vast stores of positive karma or good virtue. So at the conclusion of the teaching, this needs to be dedicated, and it can be dedicated. This merit can be dedicated in a wide number of ways. In particular, it comes down to all beings attaining liberation from suffering and enlightenment itself. And here it recommends the King of Prayers, or it's translated as prayer of good conduct, which is a particular prayer in which the vast activities of the bodhisattvas are mentioned, and thereby it's a dedication in a very expansive manner.
대답이 주기 최시지 년나 튠제 점라 지기 숭배 파연남 되면서로 중라서.
The text continues, there is no doubt that if the Dharma is explained and listened to in this manner, the benefits stated above will arise in just one session.
Zanda Dedabi Nyanshi Chena and the Pendi and the Yungures or that Demisawa said Tesumio Mares, Tokachi Mares and the Pendi Yungures or Chazan Dedabi 2 years, said the Dedabi 2 years, said that Penny Nyandia. Donye Dumbo Yoba, so Sugi, the kissing of the Kuno said the share, Nyambi, Nyamba, Kuno, the Garson, New Yun Sumba, Dushi, Twingin to Dushi, True Sambi, Hone, Nyamba, the Rod, Nyana, in the Ravada, Chesa, the Nigi, Nyada. That Ma Sungan Digi, and I am New Castle, Twingin, Dushi, True Tempe, Hone, Ma, Sunodu, the Ne Sumbaina, the Ne Sunodu, Chesa Nigagi, many Yangan Digel, Yamnan Jeg, Donyer, Dumbo, Chandeg, Donyer, Dumbo Yoba, the Nigi, Chigi, Dumbo Sechu Yobache. And then Masunga Digit and Pambe, Sembo, call a Panape, Abores, me, Pambi, Sevi, Sambi, Tone, Manoa, Matuba, Yapo, Sonodu, and then Pandoya Bunkure, Chesa, the Dedabi Tsugi said, kissing Dedabi Tsu said, this order, Yangan Digi. Negi some Tushi Tungin Dushi Duty Becone, Yada. Chegandia Tungin Dushi Duty Becone, Ma Subaina, and She Niana, Tunre Zamlas, Sarjik, Gun Mangushana, Dile Pando Cheyungura, Sarjik She, Denige, Sarjik Yamba, Chen Jeba Inaya, and Payendi, and a Chige, Demes or Tesumia, Payen that name Unguri or that.
Those who receive a teaching and do so with the motivation that was presented earlier in the chapter. So remember there we had the perception, the 6 perceptions, where one perceives oneself as like a patient, and the teacher as being like the doctor, and the instructions, the teachings as being like medicine, and so forth. With such an attitude, listening with intensity, and as well with taking the teachings as personal instructions to oneself and applying them to one's mind. So having that on the side of the student and on the side of the teacher, having investigated the students and seeing that they're suitable for the teaching and giving the teaching in a manner that is suitable to the level of the students, and then doing so with a motivation of sincerely wanting to benefit them. From both sides, having such a motivation, have no doubt that tremendous virtue will be accumulated and it will enhance your spiritual development.
That 때문에 우연히 서로 차대로 가서 랍라로 섬에 부지 배 롭션 제일 돈이 tumba sem쇼다 돈이 tumba 슈 주여바체 아니 겐디게 아마 콜리아 펜나스 배 펜심 자제 배직 sem쇼지 콜라비아기 배직 야고 줘바나 되네게 돈이 tumba 야고 요겐데 랍칸데 야고 라바나 디 판도 요여바르와 다 랍칸디게 배 펜심 제제 삼로다까지 배 야고까지 슈 직배주지 라바이네 미니 냥겐들려 되어시라면은 판도시라요 말어봐 야 냥겐들려 배 돈이 듬바다 배 직장도게 돈이 슈천부여네 랍간들려 판심시라메 되게 라비아 되어기네 메 지라면은 아니 그 야고지 말라네 판도시라 춘쇼로 봐 대제사 니게 유톤의 튕긴디 장하게 돈이 듬바여 칸 셈슈여 봐지 랍간들려야 콜라 펜베 삼바삼 다지 콜야 랍긴 셈비 셈슈던 배준지데 니가 되는 소용도 되네 비니기 랍간 장한들이야 판도야 고용아 차그로와 신야 차그로와 어디나 시리에다 최 니디가 벌레 배최 냐게 돈이 좀 자도게 돈이 듬바다 되네기 냠내 듬바슈 지어바체 되네기 자도여 바체 되네게는 이 말랍간디야 콜 펜베 삼베 토네 배지 배주지 배야 오로 코치 콜 펜네 야고도 섬지 펜베 삼로 토네 코 배주지 마노와다 배 마추바제 고름 다다 두슬라요도 콜리아 펜도다 내용으로 받아.
This is how it really is in society too. So if you think of a school where you have pupils who have a great interest in the topic and really want to understand it well, and before them is a teacher who knows the topic well and has a great wish to benefit their students, to impart their knowledge in a way that the students can understand, when both of these causes come together, it will be a great result. But if only one side is there, let's say that the teacher is learned and making great efforts in her presentation, but the pupils, they really don't care. They're not interested, they're distracted, they'd rather not be there. Not much is going to come from that. Or likewise, if the students have a deep yearning for education, wanting to gather knowledge and improve themselves, but the teacher is just watching the clock, just wanting to draw their salary and is really not interested, it's not going to go so well. So it certainly is the case in the spiritual environment. If from the side of the students, they have a deep interest and a thirst for knowledge and a yearning for spiritual development, they'll be open and receptive. And if the teacher also has a motivation of wanting to benefit, taking responsibility for the guidance of their students, these two coming together and rapid spiritual development will follow.
나 pen demisa yungurese pen sede yendere shenedi로 하다 간절에 데네기 녀게 되니 듬바나 말랍칸데 야꿀랍여디 데니 마고 삼로 간스 냠는 간에 가래 지고 최자 싱그로와 데 싱바데 펜으로와 펜비 제부로와 녀 펜스네 녀시지비 제부 요하지로 제자 데네기 냠는 제다 신용도 그래 냠는 제자 삼로 따나 냠는 제다 신용도 아니 둥아디기 바충을 따야나 디기 휴처다도 그러봐 디펜으로와.
Just to say as an aside, the main outlines are in our published text, but the sub-outlines are omitted just to make it more readable. So this paragraph here that we're looking at is actually entitled The Benefits That Arise from what we've had here above, from the teaching. So Geshe is now explaining that, so benefits, how to understand benefits, is that the benefits are the results that follows from engaging in a particular activity. So in this case, where the student and the teacher both have appropriate motivations and engaging in the activity of teaching and receiving teachings, then the result of that is what is meant by a benefit or a good quality. Paragraph continues. When the acts of listening and explaining the Dharma have penetrated the heart of the matter, all the karmic obstructions accumulated previously by, for instance, not respecting the Dharma and those who expound it, are purified, and all those newly accumulated are cut off.
최 마시엔 디게 삼로 약고제 마노 마노볼 마투고지 마 약고시 냥엔 디게 안지게 되냐기 듬바다 베베 삼다제 되니 되냐 전주기 돈도 냥요도 네도 송와스데 된다디 네도 송와스데 되니 마시에도 안만 가소레 최시베 된다디 주고래 네도 송와 된다 주고래 된다 주고래 가스네 many Yankee Yamlin Jetangi Yumoba, Ma Pangtang, Yabo Gomtang, Lam Yamlin Jibarimba Shinguedirwa, Jazadi Shingore, Chu near the Sonwas. The Negi near the Sonwa, the Nesu Shingores, near the Sonwas, near the Sonwas, near the Sonwas said, it is near the Sonwas said, how go what say? Dunda Dugur, but Chue She Menima, she Yangan did Hamogona. Tene she gazishena dona de dugo maraje tata ne de songo mar tata chago mar cheza nye du shin nye dönyu dumba ma hasam da de spas ya ko mano ji chu she yodum ko nyamne je de rimba de shingo de shinyo de ko chu she be ne de song re so.
In this sentence is an expression we haven't come across before, penetrated the heart of the matter. So this is what will follow when you have the causes together of a teacher who's qualified, who's knowledgeable and experienced, and has the best interests of the students as their motivation. And from the student side, they have a keen interest in the topic, and they are open and receptive, listening intently, taking it as personal advice to them. When these come together, then the teacher will be able to impart well, and the students will accomplish the meaning of what is being presented. So they'll both hear and understand, and also it will touch them, it will touch their heart.
Magubala, Che down, Che Mawala, Chela, Maguba Gimare, Che, and the Shekan Maguba Gimares. Carasene Goi Denigi, Yendenji, Tong, Koronzi, Denigi, Tong Yende, Tong Korong, needs to the Hago, oh, that should be Aureda, the D, Manzo Ganga said, Yamlenji, Dunga said, the Tablam Direto, some big Ishili. Didn't gain the Leata, Cheshire and the Bear, which is on the Lamden Bear, which is on some big Delia, Delia, the Bear must gain Cheshire and the Getting Chimbo Bear, which was a big Della Gushep, the Chela, Gushep down, and the Chesung and Balama, Gushepki Horres, Gushepki, Nuchela Maguba down, Cheshire and Maguba Yungo Mares, the Marode, Lady Diva, Nyama, the Niki Gushepki, Nyama Dibas Glade Nambasajavade, Nasabiki Dibati Lady Dibati Daru Gore, Diba, Legi Diba, not a Saba Tamsha, Nyama, that Lama down, Chola Maguba Chibiki, Deniki Dibasawena, the Lama down Cholia, Gubaki Odu, Kushipki Odu, Diabadam Kushipki Odu, Nyama Maguba Dibati Pataru Gore.
And this further explanation to the sentence is when the student has such an attitude, a keen interest and a yearning for knowledge and spiritual development, they will deeply appreciate this opportunity to receive this Dharma teaching on whatever particular topic it may be on, because they will have an understanding that this is adding to their progress towards liberation. So therefore, they'll have a great sense of appreciation at being able to fulfill this opportunity or take advantage of this opportunity and receive this teaching. So in this way, they'll have a deep appreciation and respect towards the teaching. And having a respect for the teaching, they'll have a respect for the teacher, because they'll be focusing on the meaning of the teaching and feel how fortunate they are to be receiving this from this qualified teacher. So with such an attitude, they will not be making the karmic negative karma of having a disrespectful attitude towards either the teacher or the teaching. And by the virtue of this positive attitude, they'll be purifying any past karmic obscurations from being disrespectful towards a teacher or teaching.
Tamje yang chocheba da sidu sardo soba sidu da jige chue mawa bala ya maguba ye diva sardo saya da ne chele ya an maguba ye diva sardo seba di chochigi di yung mare la da gasne dan korongi chue nye en chue de nye ji de korongi 위 니수다 튜바지나 그런 연대지 통고로 통사를 받아 세부 하고 차원자 안 최시간이야 마오발라 최승한들 마구바디 마오바네 기기 말해야지 최 마오발라 마오바 기기 말 최라 마구바디 기기 말해서 마제반자 서도 속바 탐지 최셔 봐서도 지산 최당 최 마오발라다 최려야 마구바 기위 디바 서도 사기 말해서 사바 사기 말해서 녀마디 녀마 사바디게다 서도 사기 말해서 사바 사기 말해서.
And the sentence concludes with, and all those newly accumulated are cut off. Well, cut off it's what it literally says, but the meaning is that no further negative karma like that will be created, or karmic obstructions like that will be created. Because of the positive attitude towards both the teacher and teaching, no similar karmic obstructions will be created.
dine zada ngana jige jizade kwarangi chue nyamlin jechu yenden da pen yoba da hago yodu ne chue sungan de la maguba ki ma odiko ya bure sa ma do maguba ko nga maguba ki da chue shegen de ko wa tang go ru jin shi go re da ji ta ta ma re sa da a chue sa de dine yo ma re chue da ga se ko wa tang go sa dine shi che da maguba she go ba da korongi chue nye dang bo tue 다 퇴배 된다라 삼당에도 되네게 소소리야 판도 여바지다 순디 구구 여바데 우이니 수임바다 하고요도 제자다 최시바다 최반 마고바디 이 말했다 등은에 덴바레샤 선배 그런 게 소소기 냠녀다 하고 와인자 안 마고바다 이 말했어 마기바디 금센 되네스 오늘
What's said here really is the case. If one values the benefits of the Dharma, one will naturally feel an interest in the teaching. And similarly, if one values the benefits of the Dharma, one will naturally have respect for the teacher of that Dharma.
Dönye기 톤에 봐서 소기 nye 다 순간기 하산 남다게 톤에 펜베섬 꾸내진 만오다 마추바디 마직 의니스 파 셰발라 때네 그런기 아니지게 냠랭이 좀봐 동화세야당 탑람 디기주비야 탑람 디두스 하고 그래 킹게로 판 싱그리에서 다싱에 디싱그리에서 디파이어리에서 펜페이어리에서 다 디싱그리에서 다 디싱어도 안에 가려운 거였으네 최 시간이나 최리야 구백기그리에서 마도 마구바리 끼기 말해서 제가 마구바 맞게 와서 구백기 베게 손음사고래 손음사be 뭔가 마구바게 바이나래다 는 다들 고용 패다 디니 구백기는 연대 통한자 뭐바나 안 최다 최마발에 마구바리 끼기 말해서 나디다 도신 다닝보두지로 천년 제베게 탐에 다져 제부 가려운 거였으네 라산의 최바지고 그런 게 냠는 제신바디 싱그레스 그런 판도한테 용그레스 제 그런 게 냠는 제가 되네 그런 게 디기 줘야다 동아세도 그런 거 냠용 게 당연히 레도 와서 배 삼게요도 안 최랩 구백이야다 최마발에 90개야다 용그레스 제가 디네자 최래야 마구백이야다 최래야 최순간 발에 마구백이야다 용 말해서 너는 용보대 되래다.
So on many occasions we've already heard that one needs to gather knowledge but not leave it merely intellectual, it needs to be integrated within oneself and thereby gain experience of the Dharma. So to the extent that one gains experience of the Dharma in this way, one's interest and enthusiasm for receiving Dharma teachings will naturally grow. And with stronger interest and energy towards the Dharma, one will naturally have respect for both the Dharma and the teacher. Because this, as one is starting to gain experience of how the Dharma is producing ever more happiness and helping us deal with life's challenges, we will naturally want to hear more on a wide variety of topics and the same topics again and again, because we've come to really experience and therefore value the benefits of the Dharma. And this then will be expressed towards a respectful and appreciative attitude towards the teacher and teaching.
Nyembi tsulnidu sonwe shebe damga gi kyang gyula pandobor gyura signes ani chir damba ngama tamje dela nenden zejin kebardo damga di lama goma nam nenden shindu chabar zedos.
The text continues. When such listening arrives at the heart of the matter, the instructions will benefit the mind. Seeing this, all the holy beings of the past pursued it diligently, especially the earlier gurus of this instruction, who persevered in it with much diligence, with utmost diligence.
Zanda nyembi nidu sonwe sede diji jiwa na jibare nyembi nidu sonwe sede sosugel chigi nyegi dilaya chigi ngazo dunga sego do digi jugu do dunga segi ta dunga dile da tago dunga sego do chezan semgi dunga sede kana sego do simbe dinge jangin sebege ta sege tablo jangis dönye dumba chin du chine sam daje nyeyo do and ma lamegi andu shin ba mano machu ba ta ta ba je smi ju song yo du ma la yo du and ko duen ta di ta samna ta ta da nyomo ba pa ta da di ju ta de samna de ha go yo du ne du song wa nian bi zu ne du song wa de xie ne song wa de song yo ma za xie bi dam ga ge jiang yu la pan do bo gyu was je za ma chue xie ba de ha sam gi tone ko le ya xie ba di and ko yu le ya nyomo se ya da digi jubiya ge semgi digi jubiya da ka semgi ka ha se ya pando yong go res.
Looking at the first line, when such listening arrives at the heart of the matter, another way to express that would be when the teaching touches one's very heart. This is what happens when one is listening with an open and receptive attitude and with a keen interest, taking the teachings as being personal to oneself. In this way, one will come to recognize how the teachings really can help us deal with life's difficulties and actually can even lead to the eradication of all our suffering. So when one is starting to experience the teachings like this, and they're having an impact on one's mind, we see then the end of the sentence, the instructions or teachings will benefit the mind. So the benefits to the mind comes through the mind being open and receptive, which comes with a keen interest as well.
Denigi Pando Yoga, Denigi da Pando Yoga, Hawajin, Lamegi, Chij Lamames, Lamanam, Jidang, Chishi, Lamagi, Chizu Garson, Della, Nandin Sejing, so Chesa Denigi, Chi got Gonyang Handa, Denea, and Pempi, Samba Dachin, Duchin the Sheria. Simki Dunga Sen and Digi to be a tablam de Yakuji, how quiet, Nandin in the Bezu Chimbuchin, Gay Chimbuchin, Ba, and Dustin, Laviala, Dusti Gore, Egere, Chesandi, Simki Dunga said, and Digi to be a tablam de some Dana Denishi, lived in Ched, Be, Masi, Gay Chimboda, Jike, Dushine, Zachimbu, Bezuchin, Dusungo, Chigores.
And all those who really transformed their minds and became remarkable practitioners, they saw that were starting to gain experience of the Dharma, bringing happiness into their lives, helping them successfully eradicate suffering. And in this way, they applied themselves with ever more effort and vigor to the teachings. And this is how, as we see in the rest of the sentence, seeing this, all the holy beings of the past pursued it diligently. So this is how they became counted amongst the holy beings, how they developed themselves to becoming great spiritual masters, was through being touched by the Dharma and striving ever more in it. Especially the earlier gurus of this instruction who persevered in it with the utmost diligence. So the translation doesn't quite get it across, but it's really because their heart had been touched by the Dharma, they strove in the Dharma with a deep yearning to cultivate the minds of the Dharma within them, and in this way be able to spiritually develop and be of ever greater benefit to others.
Chebardu tamga di lama goma nam nende shindu chebar zedo sida chebardu sida dangan labardu chike kiusumge lamyirimbe nyamringirimbe tamga disore chebardu sade deji chede chidangi da nyamringirimba karitemba inas Gichimuzigores. That Habardu, Kabardu, Sideda, Givusumge, Lamyirimbe, Yamlingirimba diba, and Shengi, Semgi, Dunase, and Digitu, and Yamlingirimba, Tamgat Bechik, Lama, Lamrimgi, Sunka Lama Goman, Namgibechik, Lamani Bechik, Delia Be, Shindu, the Gichimboda, Nende engine, and Dusine, Nangore, Egere, Shindu, Chavazedos.
Where it says, especially the earlier gurus of this instruction who persevered in it with utmost diligence. So what is the it that is being referred to? So this really is about what is to come in the text, how they persevered in the correct sequence of trainings in accordance with the varying capacity of practitioners. So training at first with the trainings shared with the practitioner of initial capacity, thereafter the training shared with practitioners of intermediate capacity, and then bringing that together with the trainings of a being of supreme capacity.
On the near that in the Jizan Chu and the Sheva than Jambig that Shagangi, Lamrim one at in the Shewa, the Sheva and a parent in the Yangali, a parent in the Yungure, says Jizan, Simu Dunga Sigi, Digi to your tablam, the net in the said the Dushin Dan, Labjer Masona, Dusnangorwa.
What we've been covering here in this chapter is how to actually listen to teachings and thereby gain the most benefit from this opportunity, and then how to teach teachings, teach the Dharma, and thereby bring the most benefit through doing so correctly.
다 디제베는 안줄레 디기투기레 디기투투고야 강아 세투그레 삼노 디담바는 안줄 동알 찌기레 강아 용그레 에세지 마 예와친 순고로 받아 제지다 원마 소야레 나나 베스르 슈베나 안줄라 셸리아 네비게 삼바 체웨 삼바 지웨바이나 체웨 삼바디 디 라신니갈 동알 찌기레 에서다 지산 셸리아 체웨 삼바 콩로 지지 셸은 지 체웨 삼바 지웨바이나 Digi, Sosoine, Makiba, Makiba, Sosugeda, Jig, Teve Samba, the Nube Samba, Conros Landubaina, Sosu Drobo, Nebu Juvena, de la Geshe Thubten doing Mother Kalasana, Shimu Medugan, and the Gardueven, Niena, Niyu Moko, Tenekanga, Siran, Rangle Ganga. Digi Kondo Digi, Shan Pachi to Jig Lugin, Namburnagi, Susu, then you Jig de Gable, Shan, never Jig de Gable, Shan Pachi de Midewa, Ganga. Controlaya that did a gangade, she's a Rashinical Gangajigo, she's a competitors, control the shell at somebody, Dingan to the Mogoya, yes, the member so good, Ejerba. That the members are not Tam Ganesing member so good, said Jamba than Zevi Samba Jamjecom, yes, and Jamba the Zevi Samba Chores. She's a Jamba the Zevi Samba Shell, Jamba than Zevi Samba Chubina. So in a Kibu Grace, and the Sosu drop walk away over 2 and a delia Kishipachi, some windom used in the Sambi Kishi Awasha, then Chasan Kiwada. Sosugi Jamzi, but Shanley Kibusia, the Shanya Digitu Tugore, Ralia Digungres, Setar some Tabena. Set Chima, the Kiwa Chesanjo, Taba, the Tamji Mokowa, sometime, Jamba, the Ziva, some of the Kazeta, Taba, the Tamji Mokowa, Toya, Tanya, Tugores. Chesanda. Control the shell at Civi somebody Cedela in a Rashinigala Ganga, Digi Jebu, Takewa Chima, the Mohomba, sometime Dunga, Yushawre. Dini Zada, Peson Masananzuki, control and Civi somebody Mabasores, the Mabasan Carisoras, Sosolia Jamzi Jores, Dini Jamzi, some of the Ayane, Yane, and sometimes Gombadi Shucher Tangores, Jamzi, some of the Shukazi, Chershimene, Jenla, Civi somebody, quantity. Nujo Nubashon Gores, those Gene never so good as a Sungora Berus Masna.
The start of our evening together spoke about the need to come to know oneself, to look at one's mind, and based on the teachings that one receives, come to identify which ways of thinking can be classified as wholesome and which ways of thinking as unwholesome, or which ways of thinking are beneficial and which cause harm. When one comes to recognize this for oneself, one will want to eradicate those which cause harm, and one will want to develop those which benefit, because this is how one attains happiness. When we are dominated by wholesome, beneficial minds, we are happier and we bring happiness into the lives of others. Whereas if in the times when we are dominated by harmful, unwholesome minds, we ourselves suffer and we bring suffering to those around us. So for example, anger is a clear illustration of a mind that only causes harm to ourselves and those to whom we are angry at, or those who just are unlucky enough to be in our presence whilst we are angry. And when we are angry, we, in those moments of anger, are suffering. And this suffering is likely to last for quite a while, especially if you're habituated to anger. And then, even if we have a delicious meal, we won't even taste it. We may be with friends and companions, but we won't feel any warmth or closeness to them because of the anger that's still festering inside. And later that night, we'll struggle to sleep. It will toss and turn because our mind is so disturbed. And if we are regularly angry like this, soon people will see us through that lens and will rather keep their distance from us. When they have to be in our presence, they'll be on guard, apprehensive, because they know that we all too often become enraged. So in this way, we come to recognize how we, as well as others, suffer from our anger. And not only that, through the karma we create, we will suffer in lives to come as well. So the first step is to recognize the harm that anger brings, and recognize it vividly so that a deep wish arises to abandon it, not to allow it to arise and dominate us ever. Thereafter, we are receptive to being guided in what are the minds to develop to counteract anger. So to counteract a particular destructive emotion like anger, one needs to develop the opposite, the contrary mind. And to the extent the contrary wholesome mind is strong and dominant, anger will be subdued and cannot arise. And the wholesome minds that are contrary to anger are love and compassion. So to the extent that one develops love and compassion within, and one is guided by love and compassion, and one will become known and recognized as a loving and compassionate person, people will enjoy being in your company because they'll feel your peaceful mind. They'll feel the warmth and tenderness radiating from you. And you, as a genuinely loving and compassionate person, your mind is at peace and at ease. And thereby, whatever challenges one encounters, because one's mind is peaceful and calm due to the dominance of love and compassion, those things which otherwise would cause you to be enraged, now you can deal with skillfully. So here we see how a person who has developed strong love and compassion, they themselves are happier, and those around them are thrilled to be in their presence because they benefit from being near you. Moreover, you're creating excellent virtue which will benefit you in lives to come. So when we recognize the faults of anger and the benefits of the contrary minds, when we really recognize this within us, we'll develop a deep aversion to anger, recognizing that it only causes harm, and we'll develop a determination to develop love and compassion within us. And this is something we all can do. It's not beyond any of us. Even those people who are most habituated to anger, they also have the seeds of love and compassion within. So through hearing teachings and meditating on them again and again, one's anger will weaken in proportion to the development of love and compassion. So this then is an example of how we need to come to know our minds, and thereby through the knowledge that we gather through the teachings, apply it to our minds. And in this way, we can definitely, undoubtedly, transform ourselves.
이제 장안 저기 삼로유 토네 가 류가게 넘규지 교주거와 근데 삼나라 콩로 쉬우지라되네 류가게 넘규지 안지게 미션다에 토도 뜻 마디오로 통해서 제가 콩라도 미디게 추가 말아베네 미기 통해도 오다 제 소소나 마기와서다 지트 제나로 때다 지고 오다 지고 지콜지는 지콜 가르치어서 거로 가르치어서 매 기시에 파유네 파수르니 기시에 마투바지 되어야 차야다 디용도와 진짜 파주 삼나리아 빼지 이제 배제에 삼마주변에 배 동이 넘겨지리나지 미티다이나지 just now 통화되는 지 셈리아 just 갈라게 어디 지든 봐도지 기시에다 지기 토에디 기시 되어요 용도와 제상 안주기 삼루기 토네 류가게 넘겨 기시에다 유와두고래 류게 넘겨도나 유와두고라 제상 삼론의 약부주에는 류가 넘겨되면 전화 통화도 just 대라라게와데 로디 부여야지 삼로딩 즉 콩로다 되니기 마기와 정도 류가 넘겨대 약부 매와 차지 가라 말랍네 미전다 통일되네 셈나 마디시지 마지와 시차데 띵안주 녀도 비투도 와서 차상 냠녀여로 싫어하다.
And what we all have personal experience of when it happens to ourselves or we observe it in others is that when someone's mind is overwhelmed by anger, it doesn't just stay in their mind, it's expressed. It can be expressed through how they speak, and it can be expressed through how they act, perhaps their facial expression. And you know that when you see someone who you can recognize as angry from a distance, and you see they are enraged, even though it has nothing to do with you, fear arises, and an apprehension arises, and if you can avoid them, you certainly will. The converse, though, is also true. When you know someone to have a loving, tender heart, when you see them from a distance, immediately joy will arise, because you have an expectation based on knowing this person, that they are really a good person, a decent person, and joy will arise within you. So this we know from our own lived experience.
Then
thank you. Then we can conclude here tonight, and we will conclude the chapter tomorrow. Thank you. But if you have some questions, then please feel free to ask. Peter.
Differentiating those between the explanation should be given. Should we take that advice for ourselves in socialising, etc., people express an interest and ask about reasons, and also not being a teacher, but is it also acceptable to offer information to people who we think might be successful, even if not us?
So the advice we received at the beginning of the class was in terms of teaching the Dharma, but should we also follow that advice when we aren't Dharma teachers? For example, if someone asks us a question, and then we think whether or how to answer it. Yeah? And was there a second part to that?
If we think someone is a suitable vessel, can we then offer them some information?
Okay. So that's a good question. Entirely follow the example here in your daily life, and when someone asks a question, examine their motivation, their ability, or their background, and then reply in a skillful manner.
Okay.
And Cameron?
Also, I was just interested in relation to the teacher, the student asking for teachings and the teacher knowing the student. What about advertised teachings? Because in that case, the teacher doesn't know who's going to be there and doesn't know anything about them, and the student didn't actually ask for the teacher. They just saw an act.
So in our modern context, the teachings aren't supplications aren't made for a particular teaching and then it's given to that student. Rather, an advertisement's made, and whoever sees the advertisement and feels drawn, they come to it. So how does this fit with what the teacher is meant to do, like it's described here? Deni jawab sapa ki netan dan shum jawab je ki netan pi dan tupo dinaminas.
니레 소와 뎁세디 차상의 미령 어른의 소와 뎁고 말와 디나데 소와 지내 미치기 소와 뎁나 아니 차상의 구sab제네 소와 디고르와 직셰로치베 제로체세 소와 디고르와 지산디 아니 디기 아니 튀고르와 디고르와다 디고르와 다음에 용한디게 차상 자기가 캡라타도 된지 요소 코로나즈 되냐다 dimba yene 용고르와다 세상 디 콘저가를 하고 그랬으면 콘저가를 하고 그랬으면 야 시로 제세딩 이게 시 주요받아 하고 살아봐다 세상 코로나지 대 주요받을라 갭겨 여러봐다 코로 칸에 무슨 말아야나 결혼이 주요받을 야 갭겨 제제 아니 가소래 켈린 제제 안 dimba지 용어라 디디로 봐 세상 배는 아주 결혼지 쇠버름지 배배나라 결혼지 손주도 손주가 차상을 주고 손주나로 주고 말봐 안 될야 무슨 주거디 매직 고티 책한테 주고로와 주지는 지된 차상기 주비게 콩 주고 왔다 수지가 주간 균에 매받지는 마신 디고 말해서 그래 맞아 미링어를 주고 말 미링어를 주면에 고티지 주여도 손주 주간 차상 용어 되게 차상 될야 아니 대바 튀버지는 겹겨지 주발에 또 디고 어디게 니 머니 다이든 간제레 라미게 나데 디니치 왕나도 숨고던 게 왕 디니치 남게 데려야 켈렌 데네데 고고레 디니치 고고레 삼든 땅 고고레 디 제툼나 경서 왕주어서 디메네 용교 말했는데 라마리 남도와 제산 데니기 소수게 디 나데 되바제 데니 용바에서 디 임바에 시작을 하다
Firstly, the teaching does not need to be requested by all those who receive it. If it's requested just by one person, that is sufficient. And then in terms of our modern situation, the people who come responding to perhaps something they've seen on the internet, by seeing that on the internet, an interest has arisen, and then by them coming here, they've acted on that interest. So they have a keen interest in the teaching, and therefore that fulfills the requirements. They're not have not been compelled to come here.
Yeah, that is.
Thank you.